Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you to the Swiss Finance Council for this invitation and for the possibility to introduce the second panel of the day on sustainable finance. This is an area where we are witnessing a lot of activities these days, and not least here in Europe. So I'm happy to have this opportunity to update you on our work about this important topic. The discussion paper that was presented earlier today underlined an important fact about sustainable finance. It was cross-border cooperation between industry actors that sowed the seeds of the growth that we are seeing today. In fact, Switzerland was an early enabler of green bonds. In 2015, it became the first national government of the climate bonds initiative. These early initiatives have shown that sustainable finance can work. But my message today is that time has come to aim higher. For sustainable finance to reach its true potential, we need to provide right regulatory conditions and incentives also across borders. And as European Union is determined to take the initiative and provide global leadership in this effort. But before I get into sustainable finance, allow me to touch on another topic that was covered earlier today, namely on international regulatory cooperation. Last year, EU's economy grew by its fastest pace in a decade by 2.4%. And for this year, our winter forecast, which came out last week, predicts another year of solid economic growth of 2.3%. This growth is possible today only thanks to the substantial financial sector reforms which were put in place after the crisis. Building on the financial reform agenda agreed in G20, the EU adopted more than 40 pieces of legislation to restore financial stability and market confidence. Today, banks are stronger and much better capitalized than just a few years ago. The crisis led to some retrenchment in cross-border financial activity, such as international bank lending. But financial markets are still closely interconnected. For example, in 2016, over 25% of global equities and 31% of global bonds were owned by foreign investors. And with the new digital technologies making it cheaper and faster to transact across borders, those numbers could rise further. For healthy economic growth to continue also in the future, we need to remember the lessons from the crisis. It shows that our financial system is truly international, that financial stability cannot be achieved within national borders. This is why the EU is committed to maintaining and developing strong international standards to avoid regulatory arbitrage and renewed instability. To sum it up, global markets need global rules. I know that this conviction is shared also by Switzerland. In fact, we are partners with converging positions in many of international standard-setting bodies such as Financial Stability Board and the Basel Committee. International cooperation is also crucial for maintaining a level playing field for banks. This is why we welcomed last December's agreement on reforms to the Basel III framework. Now it's essential that all major jurisdictions implement all the key elements of the agreement. In 2016, we presented a proposal for implementing standards already agreed in the Basel Committee. This is part of our ongoing efforts to reduce risks in the European banking sector, and it's currently with our co-legislators. But only once last December agreement is implemented can we finally say that the last major piece of global post-crisis regulatory reform is in place. Let me now return to the topic of the panel, sustainable finance. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to witness a major shift of our economy. We are moving away from a model that depends on extraction of large amounts of finite resources from nature, and we are heading towards a low-carbon, more resource-efficient economy. This is essential to limit the global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, and it will have to be a global effort. The fact that over 170 countries have ratified the Paris Agreement makes that clear. In Europe, we need an estimated 180 billion additional yearly investments to meet our climate and energy targets. And it's clear that public money will not be enough. So we need to redirect finance capital towards private capital towards investments in green and sustainable projects. This is why about a year ago, the European Commission appointed a high-level expert group on sustainable finance. Their mission was to elaborate a full set of proposals for the financial sector to support the transition to the low-carbon economy. Less than 2 weeks ago, they published their final report. It is a manifesto for a far-reaching reform that includes the whole financial sector. By implementing it, the EU should lead the global developments. The Commission is ready to follow up on the report's recommendations and deploy sustainable finance at pan-European scale. Next month, we'll present an action plan for mobilizing green investment and integrating sustainability into all aspects of the financial system. So let me outline some elements. Our priority will be to establish a unified EU classification system or taxonomy for sustainable assets and activities. This will help us to define what is green and what is not, and identify areas where sustainable investment can make the biggest impact. This spring we'll present a legislative proposal on the governance of this EU classification system. Also this spring we'll present a proposal to clarify the duties that asset managers and institutional investors have to take sustainability into account in its investment process. This would help their clients to get more information and options for sustainable investments. We're also looking at actions that would link into and build on the EU classification system. For example, a larger market for green financial products can drive the investments that we need and help us to meet our climate goals. This is why we intend to establish EU criteria and labels for green bonds and investment funds building on the EU classification. By allowing investors to easily identify products that comply with green or low carbon criteria, this would help for those looking for more sustainable options. Finally, we are looking in boosting green investments and loans by introducing so-called green supporting factor. This could be done at first by lowering capital requirements for certain climate-friendly investments, such as low energy or energy-efficient mortgages or low-carbon cars. However, green does not mean risk-free. Any measures would have to be carefully calibrated and based on clear EU classification to avoid the risks of greenwashing. So there are some examples of the measures that we are considering as part of our upcoming action plan. But to conclude my speech today, I would like to remind you that the European Union cannot drive this important change to our financial system alone. We need a worldwide coordinated effort. Time is right for us to put in place proper conditions and incentives for sustainable finance across the sector in Europe and globally. This is how green investments can continue their growth. This is how sustainable finance can reach its true potential. And this is what our action plan next month will be about. Thank you very much.